Hello and welcome to another episode of The Corporate Etiquette, a show where we break down the corporate world so you can make better sense of it. My name is Laura and I am finally back from vacation and recovering from COVID. And in this episode, I want to talk about quiet quitting and why I don't really recommend it. When I first heard about quiet quitting, I thought it meant that one day people just don't turn up to work anymore, but they don't actually submit their resignation, effectively quiet quitting, but it's actually not what that means. Quiet quitting simply means that workers show up to their work and do simply their job description and nothing else more, and leaving on time and just not doing any sort of overwork or overtime. And also the flip side to the quiet quitting is actually a quiet promotion, if you can call it that, where you suddenly become tasked with more things or more important things, but that's not actually reflected in a change of title or a change in your salary. And to be completely honest, when I first heard about these concepts, I was just kind of puzzled by them. So I figured that other people would be puzzled and I should make a video about this. So thumbs up this video if you are also interested in knowing more about these concepts. Let's dive into what quiet quitting is, why it's not a good idea, and what you should do instead. Before we jump into all of that, let's first talk about what is the natural career path of a corporate career. And it all starts with you being hired to do a particular job. In the beginning, you're ramping up, you're trying to learn what you're supposed to do and trying to be also good at what you're supposed to do. Then, in general, in order to progress to the next level, you'll start doing things that are beyond your current role expectations and be more than your job description currently. And after you prove that you can also do some of these things that are related to the next level, usually a promotion follows. So I guess if we use the concepts that I mentioned in the beginning, you get a quiet promotion before you get your actual promotion. In other words, you are actually getting more responsibility before any change in your title or salary, but that doesn't necessarily have to hold true. It only depends on what is the compensation structure that your company employs. So usually once you are displaying abilities and doing things beyond your current level, you might be rewarded with more significant salary increases at the year-end review or more bonuses. I do have to say that I don't think I can name a company where a promotion just comes without any foreshadowing signs of it. And yes, generally speaking, these signs are you taking on more responsibilities, having an open and candid conversation with your manager about your career progression and career aspirations, and maybe even a few failed attempts at promotion depending on how the process in your company works. And really, to stress here, I don't think I can name one big company or even medium-sized company where you can just get promoted without displaying some sort of ability to work at the next level compared to where you are. I mean, I guess unless your dad is the CEO. And I wanted to mention how this works normally in order to kind of contrast just how odd the concept of quiet quitting is. Or, well, I do suppose that the fact that I do call it odd is kind of showing off my A-type personality, but it kind of contrasts to what is the regular path in a corporate career. So now that we got that out of the way, let's look at what you should be doing instead of quiet quitting. And I have to say that I personally believe that quiet quitting is coming because employees are feeling a lack of control towards their career progression. And this isn't any sort of definitive analysis of the root cause of the movement. This is just a hypothesis that I personally have. I can definitely see somebody evaluating that their career is not progressing despite the making a lot of effort and then thinking, well, if I can't improve my circumstances through hard work and dedication, why should I try at all? If I can't work for more money, if the money that I get is not proportional to my work output, then why should I give anything extra? And I think part of this reflects in the fact that quiet quitting has also been referred to as acting your wage, which I have to admit I personally find very funny. And it's a definite nod to the classic advice of act your age that some people dish out like it actually means something, but that might be a story for a different time. Therefore, I think if we want to address this phenomenon, we should actually look at the root cause, which is, in this case, according to my hypothesis, the lack of control or the perceived lack of control that one has over one's career. I spoke about this in the Managing Your Manager series, which I'm going to link the playlist somewhere up here and also in the description down below, but I do want to reiterate a few of those points. So pause this video right here and go grab a piece of paper and a brightly colored pen or pencil or whatever marker you have lying around and write this down so that you never forget it. You should actively engage and discuss with your manager what your career progression looks like at that company. Rip up that piece of paper and staple it somewhere to a door or a wall in your house so that you never forget this, because it is the one thing that will improve your career very, very significantly. You should be discussing with your manager what the promotion process is. Where do you find yourself on the spectrum of performance for your job and your craft? What should you be doing in order to get to the next level? What does the compensation structure look like along the way? These are the types of things that you absolutely need to discuss with your manager in order to understand not only what your current situation is, but also how you can progress further in your career. And as I have mentioned previously on this channel, part of your manager's job is to help you progress in your career, depending on what the possibilities within the company are, but also what your personal aspirations and skills are. And it's important to have these types of conversations because you want to make sure that you are working on things that will make an impact, things that will push your promotion forward, rather than mistakenly putting more effort into things that either don't have an impact or you're already considered very good at. Here is a very basic example of this. Imagine that you're in a situation where you think that you need to deliver more work or faster work in order to get promoted, but if you would speak to your manager or your stakeholders, they would actually prefer that you deliver a higher quality of work, even if that means less volume. Now, of course, we do have to put in the disclaimer that your manager should actively be giving you this feedback, but if for some reason that conversation doesn't happen, you're put in a situation where you are spending 10, 20, 30 more hours per week trying to deliver a large volume when actually that's not contributing to your career progression at all. And of course, after a while, you would feel very unmotivated and also pretty burned out. This is why I'm telling you to take the bull by the horns, take control of your career, and set up a meeting with your manager to discuss all of this. You don't want to find this out at the end of the year when you could have actually made a change 6 months ago. Yes, you can wait for them to initiate this discussion because, as I mentioned, it is their responsibility to do so. But why do you want to give away control over your life to somebody else? Taking a passive seat in your own life is never a good idea. Similarly, in order to make sure that you are working towards the right direction, you should actually ask for both formal and informal feedback from your stakeholders. These are people that work with you frequently, and they might have more nuanced views on what you should be improving or what they expect from you if you were to get promoted to the next level. Not only that, you should definitely be having and engaging your mentor, your professional mentor, in order to understand if they can offer you perhaps an outsider view, a bird's eye view on what might be going wrong and what is keeping you from getting more money, getting a higher salary, getting more bonuses, and ultimately progressing in your career. And in contrast to all of this, quiet quitting is simply throwing your hands up and saying, well, there's nothing more to try. There's nothing else I can do. This is just my life now. There's nothing else. First of all, how unmotivating is that? I felt unmotivated just saying that right now. And also, I don't think that that is true. While you cannot control everything, we always have a degree of control as to what happens in our career. You simply have to act on it. Thumbs up this video if you're going to go into work tomorrow and start taking action in order to improve your circumstances. Now that we have said all of that, I do want to take some time to appreciate that there might be some situations where you should probably be running, not quiet quitting. So instead of just turning up to work and doing what your job requires and nothing else, you should be brushing up your resume, brushing up your interviewing skills, and start looking for a new place of employment, because sometimes you just have to cut your losses and run. Now, I can think of a few situations where this is warranted, but this is of course not an exhaustive list. There are probably other situations out there that I don't mention. First and foremost, if your manager is not supportive, they either don't support your growth, or maybe they don't give you honest feedback or any feedback at all. They blame you or backstab you when things go wrong. Well, in this case, I think you're just working for a toxic manager, and just showing up and doing the job requirement is not going to improve your life, and ultimately at one point they will either fire you or get you fired because they're just a toxic manager, and there's no way you can win in this situation. Secondly, if you see other people being rewarded or promoted when they don't actually meet the criteria, this is a classic case of favoritism, and again, I just don't think you can win against this one. I think I've mentioned before that I have also experienced this, and I can solemnly swear that moving out of that job, leaving that job, was the best thing I did for my career in recent memory. If you are not the favorite, you're not going to come out on top, so I think it's just time to find a new job. Third, if the situation at hand is actually opposing your long-term professional goals. This might be a little bit more nuanced, but for example, if you are working towards a certain compensation or a certain title or a certain amount of responsibilities, and you see that your company is promising to get you there but is constantly failing, then I think it might be time to cut your losses and move to someplace else. Let me give you an example. If you are being declined a promotion for the third or fourth time, let's say, I think it's time you really need to step back and try to understand what is going on. Now, on the one hand, maybe you are really bad at performing at the next level. However, that should also come as feedback from your manager, but it can also happen that maybe your manager simply does not know how to help you get to the next level. And of course, this is a very optimistic assumption that they are actually being honest with you and they are well intended. It could also be that they're not really interested in putting in the extra work that it takes to get an employee promoted. Perhaps they are not being honest with you about the process, about your performance. Something is going wrong, and whatever it is not helping your situation. So if you see that you are getting rejected over and over and over again, it might be time to cut your losses and just run. And lastly, I do want to include this situation, but I think it's quite rare. But if you are in a dead-end job, then just turning up and doing whatever is in the job description is not going to take you anywhere because the job itself is a dead-end job. So in order to clarify a little bit, I call a dead-end job a job where, for example, you have no more career progression opportunities, either because of the nature of the job itself, perhaps it's very restrictive, it only goes to a certain level, or perhaps it's because of the nature of the company and how it is structured. So here is the litmus test that you should be doing. If you see people that are 3 to 5 years your work seniors and they are still doing the same thing, though perhaps for the same or slightly higher salary, you might be working a dead-end job and you might have to just leave. And I cannot stress this enough. If you are, for example, in one of these situations that I just mentioned, quiet quitting will not improve your circumstances because you need to change your circumstances in order for things to get better. So don't just turn up to work and do whatever. Try to change your circumstances, try to find a new job, either within the same company, moving horizontally, or going to a totally new company. If anything, staying will cause you to get even more unmotivated and get caught up by all of the resentment that you will feel. I can guarantee you that no good will come from staying at that job. So despite what the title of this video says, I do want to stress that I can see one situation where you should be quiet quitting. And generally, I would say that that is the situation where you simply cannot put more into your work than the 9 to 5 and the job description, but you also don't have the financial safety net to just quit. You still have bills to pay. Simply put, you're just not in a position to focus in your career, but you still need to live, which, I mean, isn't that true for a lot of us? Let's just face that. By and large, in these situations, there are outside factors that are kind of preventing you from trying to chase a promotion or trying to jump ship to a different company, and you simply do not have either the strength or the time to invest more in your current career or your current job. I mean, let's face it, sometimes life just happens to us. Sometimes you need to step back to take care of your mental health or take care of a sick loved one. Perhaps you decided that in that period you need to invest more in your relationships or perhaps bonding with your children rather than focusing on your career. And you know what? I can definitely see this as a time where you should be showing up to work, doing your job to the best of your ability, but not necessarily going above and beyond, generally trying to keep things rolling at your work because, again, you can't afford to stop, but at the same time, saving enough of that energy and time to focus on whatever outside forces is impacting your quality of life at that moment. And I will say, to be fair, If your company is fair, just doing your job, just fulfilling the job description should get you on meets expectations in the annual performance review. And while that is true and I stand by it, I do think that quiet quitting is not a great strategy in the mid to long term, because ultimately in most companies at one point you will get compared to your peers that are doing the same type of job at the same level, and if they're putting in extra work, you will be kind of falling behind. Not to mention, if your company also engages in stack ranking performance, and how I feel about that is a topic for a whole nother video because I have a lot of feelings about that. But if this is the case, your quiet quitting will quickly find you at the bottom of the ranking and you will get fired. And I know I am sitting here in a very, very privileged position shelling out this advice, but if you are, for some unforeseen circumstances or unforeseen reasons, forced to do some quiet quitting for a while, try to get out of that state as soon as possible in order to not lose your job and just get back on track. Quiet quitting is definitely not a strategy that you should be employing during normal circumstances. If your life is business as usual, try not to do that. In this very last section, I still want to go on a little tangent and maybe hypothesize a little bit more about the origin of quiet quitting. I'm sure that most of us still remember, or perhaps even still see, the rise and grind social media posts where some dude bro that always wears sunglasses for some reason would tell us stuff such as, "Sleep is for the weak. I'm gonna sleep where I'm dead. You need to be on your grind every single day. You need to hustle, baby. You need to work all day, every day," and much more nonsense on the same topic. This movement, as far as I can remember, came as a response to the 2008 Great Recession, where a lot of young people thought that they need to hustle, they need to have a side business, they need to have a second or third job in order to make ends meet and ultimately feel financially secure. And this was unfortunately true for a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs, became unemployed, and the rise of hustle culture was just the perfect answer to that economic and social climate. Wasn't good, but I can definitely see how it came about. And while I was researching and thinking about the topic of quiet quitting, I couldn't help but wonder, is this some sort of a delayed reaction to hustle culture and the rise and grind, where you really don't want to exceed and win the rat race, you simply want to turn up and get a paycheck? And to be honest, I think the answer to that question is sort of. I think we can definitely see it as a reaction to hustle culture that is still very present with everybody. However, I think it's more part of some of the anti-capitalist movements that have started popping up in recent years, especially during the time of the pandemic. Basically, people would like to not live in a capitalist society and have to work for a living, but at the same time, reality does hit and they do need to pay the bills. So then we come to the quiet quitting movement that just says, well, you go in and you do just enough to not get fired and get a paycheck in order to just live your life outside of it. And don't get me wrong, I can totally understand where these people are coming from. I can totally understand why this movement exists and why people would adhere to it. However, I still maintain that if you do want to play the capitalist game, and if you do want to engage in the corporate life and a corporate career, quiet quitting is not going to lead you to success. And actually, I'm pretty sure it will ultimately lead you to you getting fired more often than not. If you have made it this far, thank you very, very much. I really do appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. If you could also give it a thumbs up, because it puts it in front of more and more people and it really does help out the channel. And also, I would like you to comment down below, what are your thoughts on quiet quitting and quiet promotion? Have you ever done it? Why? And what happened at that point in time? I'm very curious to know your thoughts. And if you'd like to keep up with more of my videos and find out more about how the corporate world works, then do subscribe and ring that bell so you get notified every time I put out a new video. That's it for today. Have a good one.